As we promised earlier in the broadcast, you may have seen the majesty of Niagara Falls, but you've never seen it quite like this. Tonight, we've got a breathtaking look high above the frozen falls.
Picture this. You arrive at Niagara Falls in 2025, expecting the thunderous roar that has echoed for millennia, the mist that kisses your face from hundreds of feet away, the raw power that has captivated millions. Instead, you're met with an eerie silence that chills you to the bone. The observation platforms are roped off with yellow tape. Security guards patrol the perimeter with grim expressions. Officials in hard hats point at charts and speak in hushed, urgent tones about geological instability and unprecedented conditions. The mist that once shrouded the gorge in mystical beauty has vanished, replaced by an unsettling stillness that seems to mock nature itself. This isn't a scene from a disaster movie. This is the reality that shocked the world when authorities made the unprecedented decision to shut down one of Earth's most powerful waterfalls. For the first time in modern history, Niagara Falls, a force that has withstood ice ages, wars, and centuries of human intervention, fell silent by human command. But how does something so mighty, so seemingly eternal, simply stop? Niagara has weathered everything nature and humanity could throw at it. It survived the Little Ice Age, watched empires rise and fall, and powered the Industrial Revolution. Its reputation as an unstoppable force of nature made the shutdown all the more shocking when news spread across social media, like wildfire. Whispers began immediately. Locals spoke of strange underground tremors in the weeks leading up to the closure. Geological surveys had detected mysterious fissures in the bedrock. Satellite imagery showed unusual stress patterns in the rock formations. Social media exploded with theories ranging from imminent collapse to secret government discoveries beneath the riverbed. Tourism operators watched their livelihoods evaporate overnight. Hotel cancellations poured in. The entire economy of the region, built on the promise of nature's endless spectacle, teetered on the edge of collapse along with the falls themselves. Tonight, we're going to take you on a journey through fact and fiction, science, and speculation. We'll trace the hidden history of Niagara's fragility, examine the real science behind the shutdown, and uncover what this means for one of the world's most iconic natural wonders. Because the truth about what happened at Niagara Falls is far stranger and more terrifying than you might imagine. To understand why Niagara Falls could be shut down, we first need to understand what Niagara Falls really is, and more importantly, what it isn't. Most people see Niagara as eternal, carved in stone since the beginning of time. The reality is far more humbling. These magnificent falls are geological babies, born just 12,000 years ago when the last ice age finally loosened its grip on North America. As massive glaciers retreated, they unleashed torrents of meltwater that carved the gorge we see today with devastating efficiency. But here's what makes Niagara both magnificent and terrifying. Erosion isn't just part of its past, it's written into its DNA. Every second, millions of gallons of water hammer against rock layers, slowly but relentlessly eating away at the foundation. The falls retreat upstream at a rate of about 1 foot per decade, surrendering inch by inch to the inevitable forces of gravity and flowing water. This isn't just academic geology. This is a ticking clock that affects millions of lives. The Niagara region supports a $4.4 billion tourism industry. Entire towns exist because of the falls. Massive hydroelectric plants harness the water's power to light cities across 2 nations. When that water falters, even temporarily, the ripple effects are felt across the entire Great Lakes region. The economic heartbeat of the area depends on that constant roar, that endless mist, that promise of natural spectacle. Local business owners often joke nervously that they're literally built on shifting ground. But it's not really a joke. Their livelihoods depend on a geological feature that is fundamentally unstable, constantly changing, always moving toward an uncertain future. This context makes the 2025 shutdown not just shocking, but genuinely terrifying for those who call the region home. Because while Niagara has always been changing, the idea that it could be switched off, even temporarily, forces everyone to confront an uncomfortable truth. Nothing, no matter how powerful it seems, is truly permanent. Beneath Niagara's thundering beauty lies a geological time bomb that scientists have been quietly monitoring for decades. The falls sit atop what geologists call a layer cake structure, hard, resistant dolostone forming a protective cap over softer, more vulnerable shale layers below. Think of it like a massive stone shelf with a crumbling foundation. The dolostone can support enormous weight and resist erosion for centuries. But the shale underneath? It's a different story entirely. When water seeps into cracks during harsh Canadian winters, it freezes and expands, widening fissures with tremendous force. When spring arrives, the thaw-freeze cycle repeats, hammering away at the rock's integrity day after day, year after year. Most of this erosion happens invisibly, deep within the rock structure, where tourists can never see it. Water infiltrates tiny cracks, dissolves minerals, and slowly hollows out the foundation. For years, even decades, the surface shows no signs of weakness. Then, without warning, massive chunks of the dolostone cap simply collapse into the gorge below. Historical photographs tell the story better than any textbook. Compare images of Niagara from the 1850s to today, and you'll see the falls have shifted significantly upstream. What appears unchanging to the casual observer has actually been retreating steadily, leaving behind a trail of collapsed rock and transformed landscapes. Engineers have tried to slow this process with an arsenal of modern technology. Dams regulate water flow to reduce erosive pressure. Drainage systems channel water away from vulnerable rock faces. Steel bolts and concrete reinforcements hold critical sections together. But these are temporary solutions to an eternal problem. Every intervention buys time, but it can't stop the fundamental forces at work. The water always wins eventually. The question isn't whether Niagara will change. It's when, how dramatically, and whether we'll be ready when it happens. The 2025 shutdown suggests that day might be closer than anyone wants to admit. Most people today have never experienced the profound, unsettling feeling of standing before a silent Niagara Falls. But in 1969, thousands of visitors witnessed something that seemed to violate the natural order itself: the complete dewatering of the American Falls. It began with growing concerns that the American Falls was deteriorating rapidly. Engineers noticed increasing rockfall, dangerous ledge formations, and fears that the entire waterfall might collapse into a series of disappointing rapids. The situation demanded bold action, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers proposed something that seemed impossible: temporarily stop Niagara Falls to assess and potentially repair the damage. The engineering challenge was staggering. Working around the clock, crews built a massive cofferdam across the American channel of the Niagara River, diverting 60,000 gallons per second away from the American Falls and sending it all over the Horseshoe Falls instead. For the first time in thousands of years, the American Falls simply stopped. The silence was deafening. Visitors described an almost supernatural quiet, where the thunderous roar had echoed for millennia. With the water gone, the naked rock face revealed secrets hidden for thousands of years: ancient fossils, geological layers, and the true extent of erosion damage that had been accumulating unseen. Geologists rappelled down the exposed cliff face like mountain climbers exploring an alien landscape. They documented every crack, measured every fissure, and studied the rock structure with an intimacy that would have been impossible with water flowing. What they found was both fascinating and disturbing. The falls were far more damaged than anyone had realized. For 5 surreal months, crowds gathered to stare at the skeleton of one of the world's great wonders. Some found it fascinating. Others found it deeply unsettling. Many reported feeling like they were witnessing something they weren't meant to see: nature stripped of its power and majesty. When the time came to decide the fall's fate, engineers faced a choice: spend millions reinforcing the rock face, or let nature take its course. In a decision that seems almost incomprehensible today, they chose to let the river flow again, without major intervention. When the cofferdam was removed and water returned, the roar felt different somehow, a reminder that even the most powerful forces of nature can be paused, studied, and ultimately controlled by human ingenuity. But it also proved something far more unsettling. If it could be stopped once, it could be stopped again. What most tourists don't realize is that Niagara Falls is now one of the most monitored natural landmarks on Earth. Hidden throughout the gorge and surrounding area is a sophisticated network of sensors, cameras, and monitoring equipment that would make a spy agency jealous. Seismic sensors buried deep in the bedrock detect the slightest ground movement. High-definition cameras with night vision capabilities provide 24/7 surveillance of every cliff face and rock formation. Drones regularly patrol the area, using advanced imaging technology to spot structural changes invisible to the human eye. Water flow sensors measure every gallon passing over the falls with scientific precision. This isn't paranoia, it's necessity. The falls require constant maintenance that the public rarely sees. Every April, operators temporarily reduce water flow for scheduled inspections and repairs. Workers rappel down cliff faces to remove loose rocks, install safety barriers, and assess structural integrity. These routine shutdowns barely register in the news, but they're critical for public safety. The monitoring system also tracks environmental factors that could affect stability. Temperature sensors measure freeze-thaw cycles that weaken rock. Moisture detectors identify water infiltration patterns. Computer models analyze thousands of data points to predict when and where the next rockfall might occur. When rumors began circulating about the 2025 shutdown, conspiracy theorists pointed to this surveillance network as evidence of a cover-up. Social media exploded with claims that seismic sensors had detected unusual underground activity, that thermal imaging showed mysterious heat signatures, that government drones were photographing something officials didn't want the public to see. The reality is more mundane, but equally impressive. The monitoring system works so well that officials can predict and prevent most dangerous situations before they become emergencies. When they detected unusual stress patterns in the bedrock leading up to the 2025 shutdown, the system worked exactly as designed, identifying a potential problem and triggering preventive action. But this constant surveillance also reveals an uncomfortable truth. Niagara Falls now exists in a state of perpetual uncertainty, requiring constant human intervention to remain safe for the millions who visit each year. The falls that once symbolized wild, untamed nature are now as carefully managed as any theme park attraction. Of all the rumors surrounding the 2025 shutdown, none spread faster than the terrifying possibility of complete collapse. Social media lit up with viral videos claiming the entire waterfall system was on the verge of catastrophic failure, that massive underground caverns were collapsing, that the falls could simply vanish overnight. The reality, according to geological science, is both more complex and more reassuring than these apocalyptic scenarios suggest. While rockfalls are common and can dramatically reshape the fall's appearance, the complete collapse of the entire waterfall system is virtually impossible given the underlying geological structure. Niagara's bedrock consists of extremely stable limestone and dolostone layers that have supported the falls for 12 millennia. When collapses do occur, they typically involve relatively small sections of the cliff face, dramatic and dangerous, but not catastrophic on a regional scale. The 1931 rock slide, one of the largest in recorded history, temporarily changed the fall's shape but didn't threaten the overall system. What makes these collapses particularly unpredictable is that they often occur with little warning. The rock can appear stable for decades, then suddenly give way when hidden erosion reaches a critical threshold. This unpredictability is what keeps geologists monitoring the area so intensively. They can't prevent collapses, but they can often predict when areas become dangerous. The geological evidence suggests that while Niagara will continue changing and evolving, the process happens on a timescale that makes sudden, complete collapse extremely unlikely. The falls retreat upstream gradually, not catastrophically. Even major rockfalls typically result in the water finding new paths rather than stopping entirely. However, human intervention has introduced new variables that make prediction more challenging. Dams, water diversions, and artificial modifications to the riverbed have altered natural erosion patterns in ways that aren't fully understood. Some scientists worry that these changes could potentially create conditions for larger, more sudden collapses than would occur naturally. The 2025 shutdown likely reflects this uncertainty. Authorities taking preventive action based on monitoring data that suggested potential instability, rather than waiting to see if predictions proved accurate. Long before tourists and scientists studied Niagara Falls, indigenous peoples recognized something sacred in its thunderous power. Native American legends spoke of spirits dwelling within the mist, of the falls as a bridge between worlds, of water that carried both life and death in its eternal flow. These spiritual connections weren't just cultural, they were practical. The falls served as a landmark, a source of power, and a symbol of natural forces that demanded respect. Indigenous peoples understood intuitively what modern science has confirmed. Niagara is both creative and destructive, a force that gives life but can also take it away without warning. When European colonists first encountered the falls, they were overwhelmed by a scale of natural power, unlike anything in their experience. Early accounts describe visitors rendered speechless, unable to comprehend the sheer volume of water and sound. This awe quickly transformed into economic opportunity, as entrepreneurs realized that people would pay to witness such spectacle. Today, the region's economy depends entirely on maintaining that sense of awe and wonder. Hotel operators, tour boat captains, restaurant owners, and thousands of other businesses exist because Niagara continues to inspire. When the falls go silent, even temporarily, the economic impact ripples through the entire region within hours. But the psychological impact may be even more profound. For many visitors, Niagara represents something unchanging in an uncertain world, a reminder that some forces are bigger than human concerns, that nature still holds power over our carefully controlled modern lives. When that symbol of permanence is revealed to be fragile, it challenges fundamental assumptions about stability and control. The 2025 shutdown forced the entire region to confront questions they'd rather not consider. What happens if the falls change permanently? What happens if the tourists stop coming? What happens if the power that built their entire economy simply goes away? These aren't abstract concerns for the thousands of families whose livelihoods depend on Niagara's continued operation. Every shutdown, every news report about geological instability, every rumor of potential collapse threatens not just individual businesses, but an entire way of life built around one of nature's most impressive, but ultimately temporary displays. Standing before a silent Niagara Falls is one of the most unsettling experiences in the natural world. Those who witnessed the 1969 dewatering describe a profound sense of wrongness, as if witnessing the violation of a fundamental natural law. Without the constant roar of falling water, other sounds become startlingly clear: wind through the gorge, distant traffic, even conversations from across the river. The absence of mist reveals geological details normally hidden, but also strips away the mystical quality that makes Niagara magical. What remains is impressive, but somehow diminished, like seeing a beloved performer without makeup and stage lights. The exposed rock face tells stories that flowing water conceals. Layers of sediment reveal ancient seas, fossil fragments speak of prehistoric life, and the true extent of erosion damage becomes visible for the first time. Scientists find this fascinating, but many visitors report feeling like they're seeing something private, something not meant for human eyes. Perhaps most unsettling is the realization of how much human engineering shapes what appears to be pure nature. With the water gone, concrete reinforcements, steel bolts, and artificial modifications become obvious. The natural wonder reveals itself to be as managed and manipulated as any urban infrastructure. When water returns after a shutdown, it never looks quite the same. Subtle changes in flow patterns, new erosion channels, and shifted rock formations create a slightly different waterfall than before. Regular visitors often notice these changes immediately, as if their beloved landmark has been replaced by a convincing but imperfect copy. This cycle of silence and return embodies the fundamental tension at Niagara's heart, the conflict between our desire for permanence and nature's commitment to constant change. Every shutdown reminds us that the falls we're watching today are not the same falls our grandparents saw, and they won't be the same falls our grandchildren experience. The 2025 shutdown, whether temporary or the beginning of something more significant, forces us to confront the possibility that the Niagara Falls we know may be more fragile than we ever imagined. The 2025 shutdown of Niagara Falls represents more than a temporary inconvenience or even a significant geological event. It symbolizes humanity's complex relationship with forces beyond our control, our desire to manage nature while preserving its wildness, our need for certainty in an inherently uncertain world. Niagara Falls embodies a fundamental paradox. It appears permanent while being constantly in motion, seems powerful while remaining vulnerable, inspires confidence while operating on geological timescales that make human planning seem absurd. Every day, millions of gallons of water reshape the rock slightly, moving the falls imperceptibly closer to an unknowable future. Modern engineering has given us unprecedented ability to monitor, predict, and temporarily control natural processes. We can stop waterfalls, measure erosion to the millimeter, and predict rockfalls with increasing accuracy. But this technological mastery comes with the sobering realization that our control is always temporary, always incomplete, always subject to forces larger than our understanding. The monitoring systems, the safety protocols, the scheduled shutdowns, all represent humanity's attempt to make the unpredictable predictable, to impose order on chaos. They work remarkably well, but they also reveal the enormous effort required to maintain our illusion of control over natural systems. What happened at Niagara Falls in 2025 may have been routine maintenance, genuine emergency response, or something entirely unprecedented. The specifics matter less than what the event reveals about our relationship with the natural world. We want Niagara to be eternal because we need some things to remain constant in our rapidly changing world. But perhaps the real lesson of Niagara Falls, whether flowing or silent, magnificent or damaged, is that change itself is the only constant. The falls we see today are different from those our ancestors witnessed, and they will continue changing long after we're gone. The question isn't whether Niagara will change, but whether we can find beauty and meaning in a world where even our most powerful symbols of permanence are ultimately temporary. The next time you visit Niagara Falls, if you visit, listen carefully to the roar. Remember that you're hearing something that has echoed for 12,000 years, but won't echo forever. You're witnessing one moment in a continuing story of creation and destruction, power and vulnerability, human ambition, and natural forces beyond our control. And perhaps that's exactly as it should be. What do you think about Niagara Falls' uncertain future? Does the idea of the falls going silent forever terrify you? Or do you see beauty in nature's constant change? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your perspectives on these incredible natural phenomena.